Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to our headquarters, and to those of you online also virtually. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to the 2023 edition of the EBRD Literature Prize. I'm Edward Bannerman, and I'm delighted to be joined by our very distinguished panel of judges, headed by Toby Lichtig and his fellow judges. On his left, Natasha, Randall and Jaggi. And on the other side, we have the real stars of the show, the authors and translators of the works that are this year's finalists. And you'll hear from them, Najwa Barakat, Luke Leafgren, Bianca Bellová and Alex Zucker. And through the wonders of technology, we're also joined virtually by Olga Tokarczuk and Jennifer Croft. And you'll hear from all of them first, but first allow me to introduce our President, Odile Renaud-Basso, to set the scene. Odile, please.
Thank you very much, Edward, and good evening to everybody. I'm very, very happy to be here. This is the first time I think we do it in person. Huh? So since I've joined the bank, usually we've done in the last few years, we've done it remotely, which is not the same. I must say it's much nicer to see people in person. So it's the sixth Literature Prize from the EBRD, and I think really it's a very good opportunity to celebrate the vibrant and the very dynamic creativity of the regions and the countries in which we work. And it helps bring literature from 3 different continents, so a lot of diversity in the background, in the culture, in the cultural environment. And I think the objective of the prize is really to recognize and to showcase the role and the pivotal role writers and literary expression play in society. So I think we are a bank, so we are financing projects. I just come out from a 2-hour briefing on water, and project for water and pipes and all this kind of thing. But it's also, I think, being able to showcase and to focus also and to talk about literature and production coming. A book being written and from our countries in our countries of operation is also, put a bit more of un supplément d'âme, we would say in French. I don't know how to say that in English, but it's a bit more of soul in what we are doing. So I'm very happy of this tradition and to pursue it. And last year, the prize was given to the Ukrainian author Sheris Zadan for his novel *The Orphanage* in 2022. And I think writers and books like the one he wrote help us explore the context of the war, the reality of the war, the human cruelty, the abuse of power and loss. It was very important, relevant for us in the context of the war in Ukraine. Translators are writers too, and the EBRD Literature Prize acknowledges and rewards not only writers but also translators and their artistry and their ability to bring a writer's narrative and voice to a broader international audience. So this year, we have 3 quite different and wonderful novels which have reached the final from Poland, and you have there on screen the books of Jacob, from the Czech Republic, The Lake, and from Lebanon, Mr. N. I've been hugely impressed by all 3, and I'm eagerly looking forward to hearing more from the authors and translators about their work. So first of all, before giving the floor, I would like to thank the EBRD's shareholders, some of whom are there today, represented by our board, for funding the bank's community initiative, which sponsors this prize. And money, as a bank, we know that money is always important. So it's not all, but it is also important. And I would like also to thank the jury for their work and their dedication, the time they spend on reading at these books and selecting a short list and then the finalists and finally the winners. So thank you for your commitment and your dedication. And without further ado, I will give the floor to the chair of judges, Toby Lichtig. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Odile. And let me just briefly introduce Toby, known to many of you, but he is the fiction and politics editor of the Times Literary Supplement. He's written for a wide range of publications, including the Wall Street Journal and the Guardian, and has appeared as a guest critic on many television and radio programs. And as Odile just mentioned, he also hosted a really interesting event for us at the Hay Festival recently, showcasing the writers from Ukraine, built around last year's winner, Serhej Zhadan. So over to you, Toby. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Edward. And let me just say what a pleasure it's been to chair the EBRD Prize for the past 3 years. I was first approached to chair it back in the dark ages of 2020 at the early months of the COVID pandemic, and having spent the first 2 years doing it all over Zoom, as Odile said, it is so incredibly nice to be here in person, to actually have met my fellow judges in person over the past year or so, and to be here in person for this ceremony. I know my fellow judges feel the same, and this is the point at which I get to thank them and introduce them. So to my left, Natasha Randall is a writer, literary translator, and contributing editor to the literary magazine A Public Space. Her award-winning translations include new versions of Dostoevsky, Lermontov, and Gogol, and her articles have appeared in publications ranging from the TLS, Moscow Times, to the New York Times, and she is also a novelist, the author of the novel Love, Orange. And then to Natasha's left is Maya Jaggi, an award-winning writer, critic, artistic director, and cultural consultant. Her writing has appeared in publications from the New York Review of Books and Guardian to The Economist and New York Times, and she is currently critic at large for Words Without Borders in New York. And I should also mention our fourth judge, who unfortunately can't be here today, but Arkady Ostrovsky, who's also been instrumental to the process. He's The Economist's Russia and Eastern Europe editor, and the author of the 2016 Orwell Prize-winning book, The Invention of Russia, The Journey from Gorbachev's Freedom to Putin's War. So, all very distinguished. And I just wanted to start off by thanking you. You've both been fantastic co-judges. It's been a lot of fun. It's been really interesting. It's been a great pleasure to work with you. And I wanted to have a very quick chat about the judging process, because it is a strange and wonderful thing, I think we would all agree, to judge a literary prize. You're suddenly presented with this great big pile of books in a given category and asked to completely immerse yourself in them over what's usually several months, and certainly was in this case. You're not reading for pleasure exactly, although pleasure does obviously come into it and should come into it, but there are many, many other criteria: uniqueness, impact, readability, rereadability, recommendability, if that's even a word, imagination, truth to life, the ability to evoke a particular time or place or feeling, and of course the quality of the translation. Criteria at which, unfortunately for we mugs who have to select a winner, all three finalists excel in spades. So, I'm going to come to you first, Maya. What things were you looking for as a judge, and what was your general experience of this year's prize?
Well, first of all, in terms of the general experience, I'll come to first, which I'd like to say that it's been a huge privilege to read these books in the company of these judges, because when I judge a prize, I'm not simply interested in giving my opinion. Part of the pleasure is listening to other people's readings of the books and the close readings of the books. And that's augmented by the authority and the experience of your fellow judges. So that's very important. But I also look for authorial presence in some form in books. And it could be directly through voice and narrative. It could be much more indirectly through irony, humor, plot, character even. And to know that one is being led, because particularly with this region, there are some very dark areas that we have been led into, perhaps not surprisingly, in Central Eastern Europe, through to the Balkans, the Caucasus, Turkey, the Arab world. And everything from mental disintegration to environmental catastrophe, anti-Semitism, some very dark things. So I need to know that the author, we're in safe hands, but the author, there is a point to this, we're being taken, we need to look at this together. And that assurance is something I think I look for and I sense in a novel.
And does that chime with you, Natasha? Do you feel similarly about the experience of judging?
Yes, it's fascinatingly sort of a strange and sort of sea-like experience at once, and then you have these moments of quick understanding where you're clear on whether a book is a yes or a no and why. And it was fascinating to see us all sort of swim around these books and circle back to a few and initially be doubtful about one and then come back and think, no, actually. And we were very, well, I think we're all rather different readers, but actually we were pretty unanimous.
Yeah, there weren't many punch-ups.
No, there really wasn't that great moment of storming out of the room and, throwing all the books out the window. But no, it was fascinating. I thought it was a really interesting process.
And what would you say, I mean, all literary awards, arts awards have their own distinct character. What would you say distinguishes the EBRD? What makes it the EBRD Prize?
So it's when I actually remember asking you that at the beginning, because when you asked me, I was like, well, so what's the flavour of this? Are there any parameters that we've really got to consider? And in fact, the primary parameter is geography, just the scope of the EBRD's work geographically. But other than that, we were very much told and understood to be judging this entirely on its literary quality and the quality of the translation.
And that was essentially up to us to decide what that meant.
Yeah.
So it's time to come to the actual books and finalists themselves. Just to recap, and it's obviously up on screen, The Books of Jacob by Olga Tokarczuk, translated from the Polish by Jennifer Croft. The Lake by Bianca Bellová, translated from the Czech by Alex Zucker. And Mr. N by Najwa Barakat, translated from the Arabic by Luke Leafgren. And I'm going to start at the beginning of the screen with The Books of Jacob. A huge doorstopper of a novel in every best sense possible, starring the enigmatic Jacob Frank, a self-proclaimed reincarnation of the Messiah who led his followers on a merry dance through 18th century Central and Eastern Europe and Turkey, making various wild claims and enacting various wild transgressions along the way. The Books of Jacob is an extraordinary achievement, an unyielding feat of ventriloquism, scholarship, ambition, and imagination, as you are about to see. I hope.
The Books of Jacob, or a fantastic journey across 7 borders, 5 languages, and 3 major religions, not counting the minor sects, told by that, supplemented by the author, drawing from a range of books and aided by imagination, the which being a greatest natural gift of any person.
That the wise might have it for a record, that my compatriots reflect, laypersons gain some understanding, and melancholy souls obtain some slight enjoyment.
And I'm delighted to say that we have the Books of Jacob's translator, Jennifer Croft, here on video link from the United States. But first, I'd like to treat you all to a little message from the book's author, and I should also say the Nobel Prize winner, not least for her work on this book, Olga Tokarczuk.
It took me 8 years to write this book, and it was incredible, interesting intellectual adventure. I followed my protagonist's footsteps not only in libraries and archives, but also physically across almost the whole of Europe. I'm glad that I managed to tell this forgotten but still universal story from the past, and I feel very honored that you wanted to read it and nominated my book for such an important European award. Thank you so much.
And so, Jenny, thanks so much for being here today with us. I believe you're on an artist retreat in Florida, is that correct?
I am, yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really sorry not to be there with you, but I'm so happy to see all of your faces. And the one person in the audience I was able to catch a glimpse of was Antonia Lloyd-Jones, who is, of course, Olga Tokarczuk's first and foremost translator into English.
So, the Books of Jacob, over 900 pages, multiple voices, registers, languages, charismatic leaders and cults, the three Abrahamic religions, the benighted and enlightened populations of a ravaged region. Where do you even begin with this book? And where, in fact, did you begin with this book?
Yeah. Unlike with Flights, I actually began at the beginning with this one. I'm actually not really a reader of historical fiction in general, so this one was a little bit trickier for me at the start. I read it as a manuscript in 2014. Olga had sent it to me before publication. As always, so modestly wondering if the book was any good or not. And I instantly loved it, but I was reading it as a Word document, so it read very quickly. I got through it in a couple of days, and I immediately wanted to translate it. But then she sent me, after publication, this like enormous brick, which she shipped from Poland to Argentina, where I was living at the time, and I began to question my decision. But it took a while. I worked on it. I had a fellowship at the Cullman Center in New York, at the public library there, which was so helpful to kind of ease into that tone, that 18th century language that has to be at the same time very, very accessible and kind of inviting to the reader, but still, have this distinctive flavor.
Olga said it took her 8 years, I think. How long did it take you in the end?
Yeah, it's such a hard question to answer because I'm sure everyone is in similar positions where you have so many different commitments that you're kind of going back and forth between projects. But it took me years to find a publisher for it, and then it took me, the second half I translated right after Olga won the Nobel Prize, and it happened somehow in like 2 or 3 months. I did the first draft of like 450 pages, but the first part took years. I don't know how many years.
And my next question, I guess it might be impossible for you to answer, but I just wondered, are you able to describe what it feels like as a reading experience? Because obviously you're approaching it as a slightly different reader from the rest of us, but it's such an incredibly immersive thing, isn't it? And I just wondered if there's any way that you can describe that for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was really interested in what Maya was saying about the need to feel that you're in safe hands when you're reading about really difficult subjects. And that's something that I think Olga does so beautifully. So you know that you're going to be kind of getting into darker and darker territories and realms as the book goes on. But there's something so soothing about her prose, and also about all of the sensory details that she includes. So you're really like in this world with everyone, but you have the unique advantage that you are safe because Olga is protecting you as you go along. That would be my attempt at a description.
That's a very, very good description. Thanks so much for talking to us. I'm going to have to move on to the next book now. So we've got next up The Lake by Bianca Bellová, translated by Alex Zucker. And I'm actually going to pass on to my fellow judge, Natasha Randall, for this one.
So just by way of introduction, The Lake, it's very much its own world of a book. It's a quest. There is obviously a lake, and it explores sort of it's the sort of richest exploration of origins. There's a real feeling that you're looking for something along with the character through the book. And there's quite a lot of despair and hope, and I feel that it sort of manages to touch between the poles of despair and hope throughout in a way that very much makes a reader in touch with the experience of the characters. So anyway, I think there's a movie for us to watch.
A fishing village at the end of the world. A lake that is drying up and ominously pushing out its banks. The men have vodka, the women troubles, the children eczema to scratch at. born into this unforgiving environment, Nami, a young boy,
embarks on a journey with nothing but a bundle of nerves, a coat that was once his grandfather's, and the vague idea of searching for his mother, who disappeared from his life at a young age. To uncover the greatest mystery of his life, he must sail across and walk around the lake, and finally dive to its bottom.
So, Bianca. So, could you say, bearing in mind that many people here won't have read your book yet, so could you say possibly what was the vision or the idea that begat the book, that the book sprang from?
I always prefer somebody else to do the talking.
I know.
And the inspiration is such a fleeting, such a fragile thing that I only always figure out maybe afterwards, maybe not even after that, where it came from. And it's like a dark shape that you have to look for in the muddy water or something. If you're lucky enough, you can like work it out. So I can only guess. But I think it was there's two major influences. One was the disaster of Lake Aral, and the other one was because I wrote it in 2015, which was a year after the Russian invasion to the Crimea and East Ukraine. So that was kind of revisiting the trauma that my own nation has experienced in the past, and it's kind of, you know, living in that heavy cloud of possible oppression or invasion that's somehow present in the book, which is like basically a coming-of-age story.
And how did you, because it seems to me that very much the lake is another character in the story, so how did you work with an object as character through which and around which the other characters move? What was it like to write, to animate something?
It was more like something like a collective subconscious, you know, something that's present there. Maybe it's some kind of our collection of archetypes, maybe it's something from our tribal history. So it was like a character which is giving on one hand, providing life, but at the same time looming and dangerous.
Yes, because the lake very much sort of is very alive in your book, and actually it strikes me that the way you write is really, you know, it's one of those books that you can really smell. There's this. I don't know whether that was something particularly conscious, but you know you're there and next to it and in it and by it, very much not just by the visual, but almost by a total sensory experience. Is that something that just happened for you, or were you conscious of it through the writing?
I just do it unconsciously, but they do say, the critics say that, you know, it's Bellová when it's got lots of smell and bodily liquids in it.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. Well, I'll come to you now, Alex, as the translator. So, as a fellow translator, you're always aware of what you're not able to do, actually. As in, is there something about Bianca's prose that you should tell us about that we wouldn't know by reading the English version?
Oh boy.
Just
well,
enlighten us as to the process, even.
I mean, I think that from a translation point of view, the biggest challenge was, and I've shared about this elsewhere, keeping it compact and tight. I appreciate that you brought out the sense of smell and the thoroughness of the world that Bianca created in this novel. And so one thing that I always share is that when you translate from Czech into English, you automatically gain 25 to 30% more words just because of the way that Czech grammar works as opposed to English. So if you're not careful, you can go much beyond that and end up with a lot of bloat. So I was very conscious of keeping, avoiding bloat as much as possible, keeping it tight, and making sure that the imagery was as vivid in English as it was in Czech. All of the sights, smells, sounds that Nami experiences, you know, the opening scene, you know, you're seeing it through the boy, the eyes of the boy Nami, and it's very sensory. There's the sound of the water splashing. There's the visual of the triangles of his mother's bathing suit. This is the first chapter, so it's not a spoiler. And, you know, things like that. And so I just paid a lot of attention to that. I guess that's the main thing I would say with regard to that.
Well, I think it all comes across magnificently. Anyway, well done. I'll pass over to Maya now.
Thank you, Natasha. Najwa Barakat, on my left, is the author of 7 novels and returned to fiction after a very long absence of 15 years with Mr. N, which is a compelling portrait of a mind falling apart, disintegrating under pressure in a nightmarish city which is poised seemingly between past trauma, civil war, and so on, and imminent collapse. So we're going to see a video, I think, of that.
Mr. N has checked himself into a hotel. Anyway, he's pretty sure it is a hotel. His rooms are simple, as are his needs. Meanwhile, on the streets below, there is only the green pageant of modern-day Beirut: poverty, violence, and fear.
Why has Mr. N left his comfortable apartment to brave the world beyond? The embarrassing truth is that Mr. N used to write novels, until the very act of writing began to disgust him. Worst of all, Mr. N has stumbled across one of his own fictional characters, a brutal militiaman and torturer, running a seemingly innocuous internet cafe. So, at last, Mr. N needs to make a decision. Should he arm himself, or just seek psychiatric help?
I'm going to speak a little to Najwa in English, and I think you've chosen to reply in Arabic of your several languages which you can speak in. And I think Luke will kindly translate for us. So, Najwa, you've said that Mr. N, the novel, poses 2 eternal questions. What drives an individual to commit evil? And can literature do anything about it? So what, if any, answers did you find in writing this novel, and why was it so important to ask them?
Hi. أنا من مدينة اسمها بيروت، والحرب بدأت كنت في بداية الادوليسانس. اوكي سو بشكل باكر جدا واجهني هذا السؤال، ليه في شر؟ Do you like to translate?
Sure. So,
okay.
The Lebanese Civil War began in my adolescence, and so it became a fundamental question, this question of evil.
أعتقد إنه أي كاتب بيكتب لكي يجيب على سؤال واحد. أنا السؤال الذي واجهني هو كيف يمكن تحمل كل هذا العنف وكل هذه القسوة.
Every author is thinking about some essential question, and for me that is how to endure violence and specifically cruelty.
لا أقول العنف، أقول بالأحرى القسوة cruelty، خاصة عندما تنتمي إلى منطقة يعني هي أشبه ببركان، ليس فقط في لبنان وإنما في الريجن كله.
So thinking about violence and cruelty, not just in Lebanon, but the broader region.
هل الكتابة تجيب على هذه الأسئلة؟ يعني لا أكيد.
Does writing answer this question? No, actually not.
ولكن على الأقل يعني هي تطرح السؤال، وإلا يعني ما في قدامنا إلا أو الجنون أو الانتحار.
What it can do, though, is pose the question, and does it lead either to madness or suicide?
So we write.
So you write.
And so we write.
A quick follow-up question on the city, because Beirut is very vividly described in this book. This is set really before the port explosion, but it might have been in some ways after. A city in a state of collapse and rubbish mounds and the problem of refugees from around. And you write about it often with a sense of nausea, but how would you describe the Beirut of the novel, and did writing the book change your relationship to the city?
Beirut of the book is the real Beirut. Sorry, but it is كصورة فورية للمدينة في لحظة معينة هي قبل انفجار بيروت.
So it comes before this explosion in the port. It's a snapshot, a real photo of an instant in time.
والمهم بالنسبة لي بهذا الكتاب كان أن أصف بيروت التي تحولت إلى نوع من المكب البشري، حيث كان يأتي tous les damnés de la terre venaient ici. C'est ça.
The important thing was try to capture this image of Beirut as a great, maybe a great ball of humanity where people are coming from all over.
And للأسف ما وصفته في الكتاب تحول ولم يعد موجوداً. والمشكلة في بيروت أنني ككاتبة يجب أن ألحق بهذه التحولات التي تجري بسرعة الضوء.
So even as I was describing Beirut and writing about it, it continues to change, and the challenge for me as an author is to catch up to it when it's changing at the speed of light.
Thank you. Now, Luke, I'd like to come to you and ask, you write in the afterword that reading Mr. N is a pleasure on multiple levels. So I wondered what was most pleasurable about it for you as a reader, but also most challenging as a translator, and perhaps there's a relation between the two things.
Absolutely. And that, I guess the question of pleasure and challenge go together in my mind with translation. Translation is something that I came to as an adult. I learned Arabic as an adult, and translation began doing it in my 30s. And I think there's something that when you commit to something with your adult mind, and it is so hard, it took so many years, it becomes all the more rewarding. In this book particularly, I think some of the levels of pleasure, simply the Arabic, the style in which it's written. Najwa's prose style is very enjoyable. It's complex, but the sentences flow in a very effective way. The other challenge or pleasure is the interpretation. Figuring the story out took multiple readings for me. And so that, I think, as a translator, I benefited from having to translate or for getting the opportunity to translate it, because it meant reading it once and then rereading it again and seeing something different and then piecing together the timelines that are all interwoven. So I think those were a couple of things that I most appreciated.
Thank you. I think that's probably, I should hand it back to you, Toby.
Well, I hope that's given everyone a flavour of the three finalists. Really, if you haven't already, I would urge you to go and read all three of them for yourselves, because each one of them would make a very worthy winner, I think we'd all agree. Unfortunately, such sentiments would also make for a boring ceremony. So I would now like to invite the bank's president, Odile Renaud-Basso, to announce the winner of this year's prize.
So the winner of the EBRD Literature Prize 2023 is The Lake by Bianca Bellová, translated by Alex Zucker, and published by Parthian Books. Each one of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. What do I do now?
So I think, Toby, we would like to say a few words. This is your opportunity.
No, I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the pleasure, for not giving any hints. I admire all the jurors. I wouldn't be able to. The trick is you look at the camera, because the cameraman always knows who to zoom on. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Parthian, for giving me the honor to be published in English. And I'm so happy. Thank you.
Is it all right? I have prepared remarks, so that's maybe the translator in me. I hope that's okay, though they're short. But I did want to thank Bianca for writing this powerful novel, for trusting me with her words. My warm thanks to Edgar de Bruin, Bianca's agent, who brought me onto the project. I want to offer my heartfelt thanks to Richard Davis at Parthian, everybody at Parthian involved in the project, Susie Wilde-Smith, Gina Rathbone, who edited the manuscript, Rob Harries for the eye-catching cover, and Carly Holmes, the publishing manager. Those are all the people I worked with at Parthian. And I want to thank the judges for their careful reading, the time they put into appreciating this work. And I do just want to say what I think makes The Lake important, and that is that it captures these very real, not dystopian phenomena. A lot of critics have referred to the book as dystopian, but Bianca has emphasized that these are all things that are actually happening in our world now. They're not dystopian, they're happening. Climate catastrophe, the devaluation of physical labor, human beings disconnect from other animals in the natural world, gender-based violence, child abuse, intergenerational trauma. It's a very light novel, as you can tell. But the point is that literature in the hands of a skilled writer like Bianca Bellová can help us notice and absorb more deeply things about the world that, when presented to us as news, we tend to turn away from. And the Lake brings us in rather than making us turn away. And it's a great read. So thank you very much for bestowing this honor on me. Thank you.
So that's a wonderful winner we have, but we have, of course, 3 great finalists and 2 very worthy runners-up, and we want to recognize them as well. So we have Mr. N, written by Najwa Barakat and translated by Luke Leafgren, and the books of Jacob, written by Olga Tokarczuk and translated by Jennifer Croft. And we have some more prizes here. Yeah. Sorry. Maybe it's right, Najwa and Luke. You have one each for the author and translator, and as you know, a big part of the Literature Prize. And we also want to recognize that although Olga can't be with us in person, Laurence Lalulio is here. There she is, thank you very much. And she is to accept the award on her behalf, so please for her. And we will, of course, make sure that Jennifer Croft, the translator, also receives her award as well. Toby, thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Edward. Thanks, and thanks to everybody, and congratulations again to all the finalists. And my final task here this afternoon is to announce the winner of this year's reviews competition. And just to give a little background to this, EBRD staff were invited to write reviews of any of the 10 shortlisted books. And out of these, we've selected 2 runners-up and 1 overall winner. And I'd just like to thank all of the entrants for taking part. It was a great pleasure to read your reviews. and to gain new insights through your eyes into the books that we've all spent so long considering. So I'd like to start by giving a special commendation to Alicia Benito Martinez for her review of the books of Jacob. Encapsulating 900 pages into a short space is no mean feat, and you did a brilliant job. And to the runners-up, I'd like to congratulate Pippa Kosherek for her review of Georgi Gospodinov's Time Shelter, a very clever take on this strange and wonderful book about a continent's collective amnesia. And also to Po Sian Go for her review of Bianca Bellová's The Lake, which captured so much of the tale's uncanniness and beauty. And finally, the winner of the reviews competition is Madalena Ferreira for her review of Volodymyr Rafayenko's novel Mondegreen. It's a very complex novel about language and identity set during the Ukraine war, and the review shed some fascinating light on its themes and ideas. So thank you very much. Congratulations to you all. And I should just finish by saying congratulations once again to Bianca and Luke for winning this year's EBRD, and Alex. nearly got away with that. Bianca and Alex for winning this year's EBRD Literature Prize. Congratulations.
Congratulations also, if I may also invite the winners of the literary reviews to come and collect their prizes, because very much part of what we want to do through the Literature Award is also get staff involved. So if they're here with us, can they come up and get their awards and we give them a round of applause? So we're delighted to see that this has prompted such great interest amongst staff. Well done to all of you. Congratulations. And please take your seat back. The only thing that's standing between you and a well-earned drink outside is me to thank our judges again for your hard work and vigorous discussion, and in particular to Toby, who's concluding his 3-year stint as chair of the judges and has done a great work in giving great profile to the prize, and we're very grateful for your leadership over these last few years, but also to Natasha and to Maya and to Arkady in absentia. Thank you again for coming. Thank you to all those online, and please, there are now refreshments outside, so enjoy the rest of the evening.